This is Rick Rule for Rule Investment Media and the Rule Classroom, sponsors and presenters of the Natural Resources Investment Symposium, taking place July 7 through 11, either in Boca Raton, Florida live or via live stream in the comfort and convenience of your own home. However you choose to attend, there's several things you need to know before you attend. The first is that we're going to give you 50 plus hours of programming in 4 days, more programming than you can possibly absorb in the 4 days that we're going to give you to absorb it. The consequence of that is that the recordings of the conference will be available to you for a full year, and you're going to need it. 50 hours simply isn't enough. The second thing is that before the conference, we interview all of the exhibitors at the conference and all of the speakers so that you have an ability in the 3 or 4 months before the conference to familiarize yourself with everybody, getting to know people that you will need to know even before the conference begins, or at the very least at the conference. You need to know, too, that every public company at the conference has been vetted by me personally. At every other investment conference I know, the qualification to be an exhibitor is merely a check that cashes. At those conferences, the exhibitors are advertisers. At our conference, the exhibitors are content. Every single exhibitor is owned in my accounts or in accounts owned and managed by me. No guarantee, sadly, that because I own a stock, it goes up. But there is a guarantee that every single exhibitor at my conference, unlike any other conference on the planet, has been vetted. And that allows me to make this final guarantee that you need to know too. Whether you attend online or in person, your tuition is fully refundable. All the financial risk is mine. If you don't think that I have delivered more than the value that I've charged you to attend, I'll give you your money back. I'm delighted to say in 30 years of putting on this conference, I've had to refund about 1/10 of 1% of the tuitions I've charged. Now, in order to familiarize you with our exhibitors, we interview all of them before the conference starts, and today's interview is one such interview. Returning conferees will remember Dr. Andrew Tunks from Meteoric Resources and a new friend of the conference, Stuart Gale. Gentlemen, first of all, thank you for your efforts on behalf of mining investors and on behalf of Meteoric shareholders, including yours truly. And thank you, too, for your ongoing sponsorship and support of the Natural Resources Investment Symposium.
Rick, it's great to be back. This is my third year now. I'm delighted to be able to introduce some of my American friends that I've met through your conference to our managing director, Stuart Gale. This will be his first time on one of these interviews, but it's great to be back, and I'm delighted to say I get a lot of interaction with some of your holders. And we love the conference, and we love to come. As you would be aware, one of our directors is a close friend of yours, Nomi Prins, who's one of the keynote speakers at every conference, and she's a director of Meteoric. And we're fully engaged around this. So great to be coming again.
Yeah,
so,
thank you,
gentlemen,
Rick.
why don't you briefly...
I was just going to jump in and say thank you. It's a pleasure to meet you, and it's great to have the opportunity to speak to all of your followers and hopefully bring a few more along to Meteoric.
Why don't you gentlemen briefly introduce yourselves, talking about your background in mining and building mining companies, and just to be frank, give our people a reason to care about what you have to say to my nosy questions.
Sure. I'll start, if that's okay, Stu. So I'm a PhD geologist. I've been in the industry since the early 90s, working all around the world, mainly in gold in West Africa. But he had a previous interaction with Rick when I was at Paladin back in the uranium boom, or prior to the uranium boom, which was a very exciting time. And Rick's involvement at Paladin is historically very famous. And then really cutting to the chase on Meteoric, I was the MD at Meteoric since 2017. In 2022, we found this opportunity, which is what is known as the Caldera project. In my opinion, it's the world's best rare earth deposit. I think we'll talk about that and I'll justify that, and Stuart will justify that as we go on, but it's an amazing project. And your new president, has put rare earths on the map. He's continually talking about America's desire and need for rare earths and critical minerals. We believe that this is probably the world's single biggest repository of rare earths. Not quite yet, but as we continue to explore, and our exploration record is unequaled over the last 2 years. So we think this is an amazing project, and we want you to learn more and want you to know more.
Stuart, why don't you tell us who you are, what you've
Sure,
done?
thanks, Rick. I come with a finance background mainly, Rick. I've spent a lot of time in the resources business in Australia, in the finance space, at a company called Fortescue, where I spent the best part of 10 years as Fortescue was going through a very, very rapid expansion, building out a lot of their T155, as it was called. It was a 100 million ton expansion. So there was a lot of financing and a lot of activity associated with the construction of what were pretty significant assets through that period of time. I moved on to the CEO role at a company called Resolute, which is a gold miner with assets in Africa. So again, development and construction, not so much new construction, but development around some of the gold mining assets in Mali was something that was key for us during that short period of time that I was at Resolute, and moved into the lithium space fairly shortly after that. So had a period of time in, I guess, another emerging market. But the reality is, the assets that all of those companies have, whilst good, don't really compare in any way, shape, or form to what we have at Meteoric with the Caldera asset. And I think, to touch on what Tunksy spoke to just then, the opportunity that we have is obviously in the development of the Caldera project in stage one, but the reality is this asset holds a lot more than just stage one. So I really see opportunities over the next decade or so to grow this thing at least double the scale of where we are, with a great potential to take it a little bit further downstream as well. So that's what gets me excited about the Caldera project.
So let's talk about the project. Either gentleman who wants to field the questions can do so. Give me an overview of what it is, what products it will produce. Why should I care right now, aside from the fact that you're going to grow it? What is it as we speak?
Sure. So just let me start and give you some background on the geology. It's a rare earth project. So rare earths are exciting minerals or elements that are critical for the electrification of the planet. And really, there are 17 of them, but 4 of them are particularly important at the moment. That's neodymium, praseodymium, terbium, and dysprosium. They provide very, very strong magnets, which are integral in every high-end electric motor. So every EV, every car, every wind turbine, every the wipers in your car, the electric motors in the windows of your car. And one of the great burgeoning fields we're getting pretty excited about is robotics, and massive expansion in robotics, IT, AI. So there's an enormous field here. And just quickly, so there are 2 types of rare earth deposits. There are the hard rock ones like Mountain Pass in the US and Linus in Australia, Mount Weld. This is different. This is one where geological time has done a lot of the work for us. So compared to those projects, the hard rock deposits, these clay style of mineralization is much lower grade compared, but the metallurgy is so cheap. The ore starts at surface. There's no drill. There's no blast. And really you wash the rare earths off the clay and you recover them. And so what we will produce is a mixed rare earth carbonate, and then that goes into the downstream and making of the magnets, which we would hope to progress. At the moment, our goals are about building this mine. It's in the state of Minas Gerais, the mining state of Brazil, like Western Australia would be to Australians. And it's an amazing project. It is an enormous project. It is the biggest repository of rare earths on the planet, in my opinion, by the time it's fully defined. it's effectively an extinct volcano, and the whole inside of the volcano is well mineralized. Stuart, from your perspective?
Yeah, look, from my perspective, Rick, the really important thing around this is that we sit on the very left-hand side of the cost curve. We put a scoping study out about August last year. We had some independent experts look at where we're positioned based on that scoping study, and we sit on the very left-hand side. So, I mean, you're obviously very familiar with the resources world, and any of these commodities, it's just so critical that the commodity sits on that very left-hand quadrant in any of the cost curves around the world. And yeah, obviously, when times are a little bit tough and the markets that we're operating in at the moment are a little bit tough, just at the minute, it's important to be down there because you survive and you generate cash flows and all of those sorts of things at low price. But when things are good, you can make hay. So it's really important that we're there, and we're there for a number of reasons. The grade of the Caldera covers a lot of sins in the mining industry, but the reality is it's simple mining. It's very simple processing. We have renewable power. We have a brownfields workforce, and everything within the Caldera is set up to deliver this project. So it's really important there. And as Tunksy also mentioned, it's an ionic clay. The capital cost associated with that relative to hard rock projects is sort of a third of those sorts of projects. So low capex, low opex, very, very important. But yeah, as we're looking at the project now, we're working through the environmental processing, the environmental permitting, excuse me, and the permitting's going well. We've probably got a little over 12 months to go, I would say, as we work our way through what is a fairly methodical process to get the thing up and running. But once we're there, probably around the middle of 2026, then we're into construction. That'll take a little over 12 months to build the 5 million tonne per annum processing facility that we want to build. And then we're up and running with first product to the market in late 2027, ramping up through 2028. So there we are.
So what stage of documentation are we at? How much is known about the deposit? If somebody comes to you for some sort of public documentation, are we in the preliminary economic stage, the pre-feasibility stage? Tell me how much is known about the deposit from both a geological and economic sense.
Yeah, sure. Popped a scope. Sorry, Tanti. We popped a scoping study out, which I guess you'd refer to as a PEA, in July last year. That was an important document because it delivered the first set of numbers and economics around the project. Those, going back to my previous comment, those economics showed that even at the spot price, at which at the time was $60 NdPr equivalent, this project washes its face, makes money, and pays itself back within just on 5 years. So that scoping study is out there and gives economics for the Caldera project. We're pretty close on the pre-feasibility study now. I'm expecting that our pre-feasibility study will be out around about the time of your conference, maybe just a little bit after that. So again, another important step on the way through the process, and we'll jump straight into the final feasibility, whether you want to call it a bankable or DFS, and into FID, around 12 or so months' time.
There are several analysts, including our mutual friend Dave Wargo, who suggest that rare earth prices ex-China are unacceptably low, which is to say the industry ex-China doesn't earn its cost of capital, and if the Chinese abided by modern environmental standards, that their production wouldn't either. If you moved the price of your product to global incentive prices, do you have any sense what that would do to the economics on the deposit as it sits today?
I'll let Stuart answer that question, but I'm excited because I know the answer is very positive.
Well, look, Rick, what we did is part of that scoping study is we ran two scenarios. We ran one at spot, which I just mentioned, we wash our face with and pay it back within 5 years. But we also used an Adamus price forward pricing deck, but we discounted it by 40%. And based on those numbers, which come out averaging around, around $90 NdPr equivalent, $80 to $90 NdPr equivalent, the NPV of the project was $1.4 billion. The IRR was about 40%, and it was a payback period of 2 years. So based on those economics, now whether that's an incentive price, I don't. I'm more worried about where our costs are, to be honest with you, and the things that we can control rather than the market. Because if you control those things, sit on the left-hand side, that we take care of ourselves in any market.
I happen to agree with that, but humor me. What is that NPV relative to your current market cap?
The NPV was 1.4. Our market cap is 150 million.
Thank you. And just for the record, are those Australian numbers or American numbers?
Yes, they are. Aussie dollars.
American
dollars.
Oh,
thank you.
Sorry, I beg your pardon.
Aussie dollars.
Aussie dollars. So Americans take a bit of a discount, given the way you think. Now, 2 more questions. That scoping study took into account a deposit at a certain size that reflected the drilling that you had done up to that period of time. What would you suggest is a reasonable expectation of the ultimate size of the deposit on your concessions relative to its current size?
Sure. So when we did the scoping study, the resource base was around 700 million tonnes. So it's an enormous resource already. By the time we get to the conference, will be over 1.5 billion tonnes of resources. Now, so that's a ridiculous figure. So what that gives us optionality about growing the project in time. We're not specifically looking at that immediately because we need to get up and walk before we run, but we think that the project has the capacity to produce much faster ultimately. And I think the other thing that's key is that while we've grown the resource, what we've done, particularly recently, is look at, it's like any geological deposit, Rick. It's not homogeneous. These things are always heterogeneous. In other words, that they have high-grade parts and lower-grade parts and thicker parts and parts that have better recoveries. Already we already know that for this style of deposit, this has as good a recoveries as you can physically get. We're right on the upper limit of anything that's been seen anywhere, so we have no worries. But there are parts of it that are better, and there are parts of it that are not as good, and there are parts, because the rare earths consist of 17 elements, and really you make most of your money out of 4 or 5 of them. You want to go to the parts where they are the best enriched. And over the last 2 years, we've spent a lot of time and a lot of research effort on learning, one, how to predict the grade from soil sampling and what's underneath. So we've got some really good models around grade prediction and recoveries based on our in-house knowledge. And we're leading the field there. There's no doubt. We've got universities from Sao Paulo helping us and around the world really getting involved. So how big can this thing grow? We're at 1.5 billion tonnes. Our measured and indicated resources are at 670 million tonnes. So that's bigger than the whole, or it's about the same size as the whole resource when we considered the scoping study. So everything that goes into the scoping study now is in measured and indicated. There's no inferred material at all. And how big can it be? 10 plus billion tonnes. I mean, this is a remarkable scale. This volcano is around 20. I'll use miles for you guys, but it's around 20 miles wide across east-west and about 23 miles north-south. It's a giant circular volcano. It's one of the world's biggest volcanoes of its type. And the mineralization is pretty much everywhere where there's clay in the volcano crater. There is mineralization. Now we're starting to learn about where are the best bits though, and the best bit so far is a place called Capo de Mel, which is where we're building our plant, so that we're moving the material the minimal amount of distance, which has an enormous impact on cost and profitability in the early days.
I asked the question around size because I understand from a net present value basis, anything that occurs after 10 years doesn't matter today. It's just that I've learned after 50 years in resources that after 10 years, with a long life deposit, you have a net present value calculation that restarts again where it left off. And that means that if you are a BHP or a Fortescue or a Rio Tinto or somebody like that, these are extremely tempting prizes. What you find is that people pay a premium to NPV because they like the fact that you restart the NPV calculation every decade for 5 decades or something like that. But let's go to an NPV thing. Our mutual friend Dave Wargo, again, in discussing Meteoric at the Rule Classroom, suggested that as you drill the deposit and you come to know it better, in addition to the fact that the tons increase, it's highly likely that the grade increases. And as you suggested, that your ability to find places that are metallurgically superior to others increases. Could you talk a little bit about the, if you will, beneficiation through exploration and how that will benefit us in the next year and a half?
Yeah, absolutely. So like I say, the 17 elements occur. What you can imagine is a bowl of M&Ms is a good analogy. And you might have your favorite colors of M&Ms and they might be the yellow and the blue. And sometimes the bowl has more yellow and blue and sometimes it has less. And what we have learned to do is by taking very small samples at surface, we can predict the amount of the yellow and the blue in the bowl. And so we've made enormous progress from scratch without any drilling. We've drilled 80,000 meters. We've taken over 100,000 samples. We have them all in a giant geochemical database. We've made enormous inroads here. And that has been seen in our exploration. So if you look at the bulk grade of the deposit, the 1.5 billion tonnes is around 2,500 ppm total rare earth element oxides. But if you look at our measured and indicated, so where we've concentrated recently, that grade is just around 3,000 ppm. So it's much higher. So we've learned over that 2 years not just to go willy-nilly, but to follow a very closely crafted path to higher grade. One of the great things here is as the grade goes up, typically the recoveries go up. And that's a very clear relationship in our data. So our highest grade parts are also our most recoverable. And then recently we published some material from a place called Agostino where, and this is quite new, we've discovered places where the magnetic elements are enriched. Now, we don't super understand the causation of that yet geologically, and that's like one of those old arguments, where does the gold come from, right? Well, geos have been arguing about that since Vic Fortescue was discovered, and it's not going to be resolved anytime soon. But why are these places enriched in more magnets? And the answer is we don't know yet, but we know how to find them. And that's probably a much more important answer than why. So we're really progressing on that. And then the other thing I'd say about this resource, just in terms of your longevity, we're currently thinking about mining this at 5 million tonnes per year. So that's a pretty big mine, not an enormous mine, but not compared to iron ore, but compared to most other commodities, that's a big mine. Let's assume that we double that. Then if we double that to 10 million tonnes a year and mine this resource as we know it now, that's 150 years of mining on what we know now. So, this is a generational deposit. And your comments around none of that being indicative in the current NPV are absolutely true, because this mine will be going long after we're gone. And that's an exciting legacy as a geologist to be involved in that. I'm sure Stuart's got some comments around that as well.
No. You hit the nail on the head. I think Rick mentioned NPV, but that's very simply based on our current single asset project. There's more than enough to build another one of what we're planning to build in a northern area or debottleneck, or there's a whole range of things, Rick, that we could do in a few years' time once we've started to generate a bit of cash flow and get this thing up and running. So it's incredibly exciting.
Gentlemen, I could talk about Tier 1 deposits for the rest of your life and mine, but we don't have time for that. To the extent that our listeners would like to learn more about Meteoric, which we encourage them to do even before the conference, who do they contact specifically, and how do they contact that person?
So, Rick, Stuart and I have discussed this morning, and we're pleased to announce that we're both open to take queries and calls. And it depends. Whose style do you like? Do you want to know about the geology? Do you want to know about the finance? We're both open. You can contact me at ajtunks@meteoric.com.au, or you can directly call me on my mobile phone number +61 400 205 555. Please send me a text because we get so much spam. I would rather just know who's calling me first. I'm sure Stuart feels the same, but very open to discuss and already in discussion with a lot of your people that I've met through the Rick Rule conference, people in Texas, people in Alaska, people, across the US and in Europe as well. You've got a lot of European followers, Rick, which is exciting. So Stu, your details, mate.
Yeah, no, very happy to have a chat to anyone at any stage. And so please reach out, contact me on my email is sgale at meteoric.com.au, and my cell phone number is +61 437 900 175. So look forward to chatting.
Gentlemen, thank you for your efforts on behalf of mining investor shareholders for a long time. Thank you for your sponsorship at the Natural Resources Symposium in Boca Raton. We look forward to you holding up your end of the bargain. The hotel has told us if we increase the numbers of Australians, that the bar tab goes up enough that we could reduce the room tab for other attendees. So we're looking forward for many reasons to having you in Boca Raton.
We're always happy to buy our shareholders a beer, Rick.
Thank you, gentlemen. I look forward to hosting you in Boca.
Thank you,
Thanks for
mate.
the support, Rick.